The footage used in this video is owned by 20th Century Fox, who are now owned by Disney. Please support the official release by buying the DVDs, Blu-ray, or watching on streaming services. Thank you. Hi. So today, we're going to be looking at something I've only briefly talked about during my time on YouTube. That being Power Rangers. Now, if you remember my Ninja Turtle videos I made last year, then you would remember I did briefly look at a crossover the two franchises had. And like Ninja Turtles, it's been around for a really long time. Like, it even has several eras. Like, the first era was the Saban era, which lasted all through the 90s. Then it got bought by Disney, and that became the Disney era, which I grew up with. Then Saban bought it back, and that made the Neo Saban era. And at the time of making this video, Hasbro has the rights, and they've only made 3 seasons in a Netflix special, so yeah, as you can see, Power Rangers has also been thrown around a lot, and given how it survived all this time, it would make sense to justify a movie. And I figured, since this movie turned 30 this year, I thought it'd be fun to look at. As well, it is a tie-in to the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which I never really grew up on. Like, I saw a handful of episodes on YouTube when I was younger, but that's about it, because, like I said, I grew up with the Disney era. However, the first season I did watch was Dino Thunder, and one of the actors in this season is in this movie when he was much younger and, well, the White Ranger. So I did have that little connection to it, but other than that, the movie was just kind of weird to me, but that was back when I was a kid. So, after 30 years, let's watch this movie again and see if it still holds up. The movie begins with a text scroll explaining the plot of the show, probably for the parents that were dragged to see this in theaters who had no idea what the plot of Power Rangers was. Then we cut to an airplane where we see the Rangers going skydiving, along with the show's comic relief Bulk and Skull. And to make it easier for people who don't know who each of the Rangers are, they're always wearing color-coordinated outfits, so you don't have to think too hard about who is who. Now, you may be asking why they are skydiving. Well, it's part of a fundraiser for an observatory, and as a way to hype up Ryan's comet that will pass in 2 days. Where we also meet this random kid character and his dad that occasionally appears throughout the movie. After the event, they all quickly notice that Bulk and Skull haven't landed yet. But enough about that, let's cut to the Rangers doing some 90s rollerblading, where they go through a construction site which happens to be where they land. And after a pretty dumb bit where they pretend to be building inspectors, some of the workers come across what looks to be an ancient seal, and upon opening it, they find a weird purple egg that electrocutes anyone that goes near it. Then we cut back to the Rangers, who are called to the command center by Alpha 5, where they then beam over there and get an expo dump from their mentor Zordon, who tells them about an ancient evil known as Ivan Ooze, who almost conquered the galaxy 6,000 years ago, but was defeated by past Rangers. However, he is about to be awakened again due to his prison being tampered with. Where we then cut back to the construction site, where we see some of the show's villains, Lord Zed, Rita Repulsa, and Goldar, along with a pig guy I think was made just for the movie, who end up awakening Ivan Ooze, who appears through a really dated 3D effect, where he then offers his services as thanks for freeing him, with Lord Zed asking him if he knows who Zordon is, which makes him angry, and upon hearing his name, he is all for destroying him, given how he was the reason he was trapped for 6,000 years. Where the villains just kinda leave him be to do as he sees fit for the task, when the Rangers just now show up and unironically discover that Ivan was already set free, with a random security guard coming across them asking what they're doing, who turns out to just be Ivan messing with them. And after they introduce themselves as the Power Rangers, he responds by making monsters for them to fight while he goes off to do something else, leading to a fight in the construction yard, with the Rangers being overwhelmed by them, so they do what they always do in these situations.
Let's do it, guys! Right. It's morphin' time!
And believe it or not, the morphing sequence takes so long that the monsters just bail on them. But they do end up catching wind of one of them getting away. Then we cut back to the command center, where we see Ivan Ooze make his way in and start destroying the place, while listing off historical travesties he missed out on.
The Black Plague! The Spanish Inquisition! The Brady Bunch reunion!
Yeah, I'm gonna be real here. I never watched the Brady Bunch, so can someone in the comments tell me what the hell happened during the reunion? Then we cut back to the Rangers, who are looking for Ivan's goons, while using helmet gadgets that were definitely not from the show. Yeah, so remember when I said in the beginning I never saw Mighty Morphin Power Rangers? Well, I did watch Super Sentai, at least the show that was used to make Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And if you don't know what I mean, well, Power Rangers is made by taking footage from a Japanese show, like mostly the scenes with them in the suits, and then splicing in new American footage. Pretty cool, huh? So, like I said, I never saw Mighty Morphin, but I did see the footage where the costumes and powers came from, so I am aware how their abilities are supposed to work. Another fun fact, the White Ranger actually isn't from this show, or at least this season. Yeah, so for the first 3 seasons, they didn't want to change the costumes. So, I know in the story, the Green Ranger lost his powers. So instead of just bringing him back, they decided to take the Ranger, or at least the White Ranger, from another season and put him with the team. Yeah, pretty cool fact, huh? Now, I bring this up because in this movie, there is no Super Sentai footage. Yeah, all of the footage of them in the costumes is made just for the movie. And speaking of the costumes, they did make new ones from the ground up, which, on first glance, you probably can't tell, but if you put them side by side, you can easily see the differences. Now, in recent years, mostly for fun, I would watch a season of Super Sentai and then immediately go to the Power Rangers version just to see how it was adapted. Now, like I said earlier, this movie does not have Japanese footage, which in a way, it does help it feel unique. As well, I think they do a really good job replicating the fighting we would see in Super Sentai with how the fight is choreographed. Also, I don't know why, but seeing the monster splatter into goo is funny to me because I'm just imagining how gory this would be if they were red instead of purple. But after they're defeated, their powers mysteriously disappear and Zordon and Alpha have gone radio silent. So they make their way back to the command center, where they find it all destroyed and Zordon is now on life support, where he pretty much tells them that with all the damage Ivan has done to their base, all their powers and weapons are practically gone and that Ivan has more or less practically won. But then they find Alpha, who's still hanging on after everything that's happened, and he suggests they go to a planet called Phaedos to look for something called the Great Power to hopefully save Zordon and defeat Ivan Ooze. And with no other options, they use the last of the power left in the command center to beam themselves to the planet. Where we cut to the villains who are mad at Ivan for not fully destroying the Power Rangers, but he doesn't really care and decides to take over, which proves to be easy seeing as how Lord Zedd's powers do nothing to him. So in response, he puts him and Rita inside of a snow globe and ends up recruiting Goldar and the pig guy as his new henchmen, as well as spitting out some snot that transforms into bird monsters called the Tengu Warriors, who he sends to destroy the Power Rangers before they can get to the Great Power. Speaking of, we see the Rangers make it to Phaedos, where the first thing they come across is a skeleton of something that isn't exactly human, as well as seeing someone in a cloak watching over them. But not long after, they're ambushed by the Tengu Warriors, who they have a hard time fighting without their ability to morph into Power Rangers. But the person in the cloak comes in and reveals herself as a half-naked person, who does a much better job fighting the bird people, as well as scaring them away by making a weird noise with her staff which makes them fly away. Where she then goes on to demand that they leave the planet, Until they mention that they know Zordon and that Ivan Ooze is set free. So with this knowledge, she introduces herself as Dulcia and decides to help them find the Great Power. Back on Earth, we see Ivan Ooze making more of his, well, ooze, for the sole purpose of mind controlling the parents of the town just so they can dig up some of his old ancient weapons that were buried when he was sealed away 6,000 years ago. And if you're wondering how he will get it to them, well, he does it by giving it away to their kids at a local theme park for free as a fun thing for them to play with. Which proves to work very well with Zora and Alpha getting wind of this after they get the TV working and see an ad for Ivan's Ooze. Back on Phaedos, Dulcia takes the Rangers to the ruins of an old temple that has a pretty good view of the monolith that holds the Great Power. But before they go any further, they do a spiritual ceremony to call upon the animal spirits of Ninjetti, just go with it, to help guide them to the Great Power, as well as giving them new ninja outfits. Yeah, I think this was due to the fact that this movie was an alternate beginning to the third season of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and the Sentai footage they were about to start using was ninja themed. Then we learn that Dulcia can't come with them, mostly for plot reasons. Then she turns into an owl and wishes them good luck. Back on Earth, we see Ivan and Goldar overseeing the dig site where their weapons are being held, while making some of the workers dance for their amusement. Until the Tengu warriors come back and tell Ivan about their failure, leading to this.
Do you want us to take another whack at it?
How about taking another quack at it?
But not long after, they end up unearthing one of the weapons. Back on Phaedos, we see the Rangers begin their search for the Great Power and end up at what looks to be some kind of dinosaur graveyard where one of the skeletons comes to life and starts attacking them. And they defeat it by ripping what I think is supposed to be its collarbone, where it ends up falling apart. Then we cut back to Ivan, who just finished reconstructing his ancient weapons, and now that he has no use for the parents anymore, he tells them to pretty much jump off a cliff. We also get to see his ancient weapons, which apparently are giant bug robots. I will talk about how I feel about them more during the climax. Then we cut back to the Rangers, who make it to the temple where the Great Power supposedly is, but before they can get it, the stone statues around the front come to life, so as if they were morphing, they put their ninja masks on to fight them. Yeah, let's be real here. The other reason they made these ninja outfits was probably to sell toys. At first they struggle to face them, but they do eventually start taking them out one by one. Like the first one they take out by drowning it, one of them gets buried under some rocks, they even trick one of them into slicing one in half, and the final one gets kicked so hard that he flies to the temple and shatters to pieces. And now with the guards defeated, the temple opens up and gives them the Great Power, which causes them to morph back into Power Rangers, where they immediately beam their way back to Earth. And they better hurry because Ivan's robots are running amok. But later in the evening, the Rangers finally show up and see the destruction caused by Ivan. So in response, the Rangers call upon their new Zords that came with the Great Power. Yeah, so if you haven't seen the show in a long time, or are just watching my video out of sheer boredom, the Power Rangers usually had these giant robots called Zords, which come together to form a Megazord, that were usually called in whenever the monster of the week grew giant. And for me was always one of the highlights of the show. I always loved the giant robots. And as you can see, the Zords in this movie were done with CGI instead of how in the show they were done with a mix of puppets and guys in costumes like an old Godzilla movie. And for 1995, the CGI just looks terrible. I mean, Toy Story came out the same year and looks way better, even by today's standards. Also, the show Reboot came out the year before, and even that still looked better. Hell, Jurassic Park came out before and still to this day looks amazing. Despite the bad effects, I do think the battle is okay. And after they destroy one of them, Ivan fuses with the remaining one, making it stronger. So in response, the Rangers form the Megazord. except for the White Ranger who goes to save a monorail track that was damaged during the fight. Also, is it me, or has the CGI gotten worse after they formed the Megazord? Now, in case you were wondering, yes, this robot was based off one of the robots from Super Sentai. More specifically, the second giant robot from Kaku Ranger. Now, strangely enough, is it me, or does this Megazord feel like a downgrade from the last two they had? Because the first one they got was, well, made from dinosaurs, which was pretty cool. The second one was made from mystical creatures, which, once again, was pretty cool, but this one was just made from animals. I don't know, does this feel like a downgrade to you? Afterwards, the White Ranger comes back to complete the Megazord, and they fly off into space with Ivan following not far behind them. Also around this time, all the kids and teenagers are trying to stop their parents from jumping off a cliff, in case you forgot about that subplot. Then in space, one of them brings up Orion's Comet and recommends using it to destroy Ivan Ooze. Yeah, remember that from earlier in the movie? And when they get him in position, they knee him in the balls to send him flying into it, destroying him once and for all. Please, in the comments, let me know if I'm not the only one who found it hilarious that the button to knee him in the balls was locked behind glass that you had to smash as if it were the self-destruct or a dangerous weapon. I don't know, that little detail I just couldn't help but find hilarious. Now with Ivan gone, his spell over the parents has lifted and they are now set free. But then the Rangers go to see Zordon, but are too late and he has already passed on. So as a last-ditch effort, they try and use the great power to restore Zordon, which not just saves him, but also restores the command center that was destroyed by Ivan Ooze. Then the movie comes to an end with the Rangers enjoying a fireworks show. But before we officially end, we do get a mid-credits bit with the villains from the show just goofing off. So, that was the first Power Rangers movie, and I don't know how to feel about it, because I did like it, but I didn't hate it. Like, I guess it just depends on the mood I'm in, because when I look back on this movie, I do tend to enjoy it more, but then again, I feel like some of the show's multi-part episodes were much better and more well-written, because one of the complaints I have about this movie, not that it's a big one given how it's based off a show, but they don't really do a good job giving the different Rangers multiple personalities, because name one time in the video I actually refer to any of the Rangers as their own character or not as a group. Yes, I know, that's what the show is for, and if you're just jumping in and haven't seen the show, or at least this version of the show, it will be hard to grow connections with anyone. Unless you're just here for mindless action, in which case, this movie's for you. However, I did really like the villain in this movie, Ivan Ooze. Which, I guess makes sense because he was a new character made for the film, and I don't know, he was just fun to see. Like, the actor playing him looked like he was having a good time, and I don't know, with how goofy he was, it was just fun. Now, I have seen the other movie, Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, but that was a long time ago when we rented a double DVD of this and that movie from Blockbuster. Now, if you want to see a good video on that movie, I recommend the video the Nostalgia Critic made because, I don't know, I think he did a good job for someone who wasn't a fan, and frankly, I just think it's a funny video. But I am a bit familiar with the next movie that came out. That being the movie that came out in 2017, which did get a theatrical release. So, if you want to know how I feel about this movie, come back. Well, at least come back next time. See ya!